All right, joined now by Michele Exner from Parents Defending Education. And Michele, been a while since we had somebody from Parents Defending Education on the program. Appreciate you being on here. We just before you were on, played a conversation with one of our local state legislators regarding a similar complaint to what you and I are about to talk about, and Gabe and Stella and I are about to talk about with you, regarding a school district setting aside certain things as long as you are in the person of color category and nobody else is allowed. And that was in the Parkway School District. We're talking about the Kirkwood School District here. You have filed a federal civil rights complaint. I mean, Parents Defending Education has with the U.S. Department of Education against the Kirkwood School District. What is it that they are doing that violates people's rights right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have found that they are creating so-called affinity groups for students and staff, again, based on color, based on, race, and that violate both Title VI of the Civil Rights Act and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So much they went as far as district-operated web pages. They boast about this, right? They're bragging about this. They're not trying to hide this fact. They're offering recruitment efforts and special privileges to so-called Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I mean, these are taxpayer-funded institutions, right? Taxpayers of all races, of all backgrounds that are funding these public schools. And it is appalling that you have school districts that think that they can allocate these resources based on race, right? That is segregation. We thought, it was bad, and we shouldn't be going back. And so it's really alarming when we see school districts do things like this.
Good morning, Michelle. Gabe Pfeiffer here. So, the complaint isn't about the existence necessarily of affinity groups, because back in the day, we had various, just the Black student unions and things like that. But the issue, I guess, now seems to be the funding. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's that these tutoring service. So one example, tutoring services are offered exclusively to students in these groups, as well as annual scholarships provided to the Kirkwood teachers of color. So this particular example pertains to the staff and teachers. And so there are scholarships that are only provided to individuals identifying as Black, Indigenous, or student of color. So again, other students, students that are not in these categories, they are excluded. And that's just to your point, that is exactly what makes this wrong.
Michele, then recently the U.S. Supreme Court ruled, now this was granted at the higher education level with the University of North Carolina case, but that should have sent the message across the country, hey, race-based discrimination is not accepted in education anymore. Is this something that is likely headed for a similar kind of showdown, or has the establishment just simply said, we don't care what the legal precedents are, we're going to fight this tooth and nail? Because essentially what you got, extra tutoring services for kids who are in need. I don't think anybody is going to complain about that. But when you say these services are for these kids and little cracker kids, you don't get to go. That's essentially where we're drawing the line here in what I'm hearing you say is what's happening here is that, if you're, and BIPOC is the term that you were talking about, Black, Indigenous, people of color. So basically anybody who's not white, they get to have this. White kids, you don't get to do this. And a lot of times the Asian kids get lumped in with the white kids as well, and they don't have access to it.
Yeah, in these school districts, all they should be looking is at the bottom line. What scores? Where are these kids standing academically, regardless of what their race is, right? No one would have an issue with this. That's exactly your point that you just mentioned. No one would have an issue if we're allocating these services to students who are in academic need of having these services, right? Everyone would see the point of that. Yes, we need to help these students continue to excel and reach their potential, but that's not what these schools are doing, right? These schools think that they can get away with their identity politics. That's what they're pushing in these schools. That's it. So what we're going to do, Parents Defending Education will continue to find examples like this, because I think that regardless of the Supreme Court case, I think we're going to see schools that are going to try to skirt those rules and do whatever they think is politically aligned with what they want to do.
Good morning, Michele. Stal Pontic is here. So is your organization seeing this type of issue pop up, not just here locally in the St. Louis area, but in other parts of Missouri?
Can't tell you about Missouri, but certainly other parts of the country. And so when we see these pop up, right, we put up what they're called OCR complaints to the Department of Education. And sometimes we do change happen at a certain level. There was a recent case, and I have to go back and see exactly where it was, but there was a recent case where they opened that group up to the entire student body, and not just on race. And that is success, right? When now these race-based admissions or resources are removed, and then whatever the taxpayer-funded or public school-funded organization or resources are, now they're open to the entire student body. And that's where we're aiming to strive for.
That voice you're hearing is Michele Exner from Parents Defending Education. So where is the case right now? The complaint has been filed. What's next, and is there a timetable for it, or is this a matter of the courts reviewing it all and doing the preliminary stuff?
Yep. So no specific timeline. It depends. So we've filed this with it's called the Office of Rights in the Department of Education. And again, this is under the current Biden-Harris Secretary Cardona Department of Education. So again, that's something to keep in mind. But again, for us, exposing what's happening is a huge piece of this, right? It's a huge piece of making sure that we get rid of these race-based, whether it's admissions, race-based groups, race-based resources, advancement for teachers or hiring practices for teachers. And so exposing this and making sure that parents in the district and the media like you all, right, are talking about this and increasing awareness so parents on the ground can continue to push for change. That is something that cannot be understated. And so we'll continue to expose these as we see them happening across the country, put up the complaints, and then hopefully we get the right outcome.
And
but no specific timeline at the moment.
Okay, and so we're going to give out the website and information. It's real easy to find your complaint right there on this. And let's go ahead and answer, the devil's advocate question. There's somebody who's going to say, but Michele, some of these minority communities, they have disparate outcomes in some of their academic performances. They just need to be targeted with the more help that other people, may not need. So what's the problem with saying Black students or Hispanic students or, I don't know, Pacific Islander student, whatever the group is, their grades tend to be here. The other kids have higher grades, so we should target something at them specifically.
Look, I'm a minority myself, and I don't think that I deserve to have any special privileges or access to anything that other non-Hispanic students have access to. So the bottom line is that teachers should be teaching students regardless of what their race or background is. And if school districts went ahead and used a metric of where students stand academically, if students are struggling academically, race shouldn't matter. It should say we need to help those students, right? Regardless of they're Black, white, Asian, whatever the race is. The goal is to help those students, right, meet the benchmarks they need to be academically proficient in those, in their grade level in math and reading, science, history, right, all the subjects. And so if schools focus on that, then we'll get to a good spot where it's not just based on this divisive race ideology that some folks are pushing.
All right, and you can find the complaint and your all's blog post about this and get in touch. How?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are defendinged.org. So please, encourage all of your listeners to go on there and read about all the great work that we're doing to ensure that classrooms and school districts are teaching what they should be teaching. And so, on October 4th, for this particular complaint, that is when we filed it under Kirkwood School District. And there are two separate ones, one for the teacher affinity groups and then another one for the student one. So if your listeners want to read more about this case, then encourage them to go to our website.
All right. Once again, that is defendinged.org. All right, Michele, thanks so much for the update. And I'll probably bug you for an update as things start working through the courts as well.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me on.